I'm really delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you, to introduce you this topic, thanks to EURAXESS Austria, who is also here present with us. So thank you for creating this opportunity and organizing the webinar. So we have 2.5 hours together, and through the presentation, you saw the program. It is webinar, but it is still the very interactive webinar. So the aim will be to highlight the importance of intercultural competence in research settings or professional settings, then also introduce practical frameworks and tools for cultivating this skill with some practical exercise, of course, and then also some discuss real life examples, your real life examples and strategies also to work within a multicultural team or intercultural team. So I encourage you to introduce yourself briefly in the chat box. So what you can share is your name, your area of research or professional focus, your profession, and also your location, city plus country. And then if you're willing to add some additional information about yourself, please do so. And of course, I encourage you to, after a couple of minutes, to scroll the chat box and to see also who are other people present in today with us. Few words about myself and why I am the one who's delivering you this topic. So first of all, I'm Russian by origin and French. My background is in journalism and communication, so all type of communication, and especially intercultural communication, that was also complemented by my PhD in intercultural management. So with this, I'm collaborating with experts from various European institutions with the goal to explore this intercultural world and to see how I can help any professional to build on this competence and, of course, to enjoy this time abroad or working within an international setting. I was working with ABG, and also prior to that, I've been traveling and working across multiple European countries, the USA. I also maintain the blog where I share these intercultural insights of daily life. So I'm really excited to share what I learned through all of this experience and exchanges, also by exchanging by other professionals with you today. Very quickly, also some rules that should be helpful for this webinar. So first of all, kindness without complacency. So of course, it is important to be kind and respectful during the discussions, especially on such topic, but then kindness should not translate into avoiding difficult topics or some critiques, of course, positive critiques, but we're all here, of course, to learn from each other, to learn from the theory. So while exchanging, of course, it won't be sufficient just to say everything is perfect, everything is good. There's probably, if you're here, there's probably something to improve. Commitment and participation. So if you have any questions or insights at any stage of the webinar, please feel free to share them during the session. So just either raise your hand if you wish me to provide you the floor, or just open your mic and say whether you'd like to share with the group. So it's really do not hesitate to take part in it. All right, can you hear me now? There was probably some problems with the All right. So yeah, whenever needed, share what you'd like to share. If you're not feeling comfortable to say it out loud, what I personally prefer, but of course, you're also encouraged to share your thoughts in the chat box. So do what is most comfortable for you. And the last rule, realism, it means that, of course, it's just a start. It's the beginning, just 2 hours and a half of the afternoon. The majority of cases, it is afternoon where you are at. By the way, let us know if there's morning, evening where you are at. So of course, the idea is just to make the introduction to the topic, but we're taking people where you are at right now. So if you're really experienced professional within this international intercultural setting, so really do not hesitate to offer your insights, your guidance for those with less experience, but also the ones who are feeling that you don't have enough of intercultural experience. Do not hesitate to enrich the discussion with your fresh questions, some curiosity. So it's really the exchange, and it's not that if you're less experienced on this topic that you cannot bring something to the table. So these are the rules for the next minutes. Do you have something to add? No? All right. So let's start then. I'm checking quickly the chat box if I can find this. All right, chat. All right, I see a lot of discussion going on. Wonderful. So do not hesitate to continue the introducing yourself in the chat box. So, and I will first provide you some key elements that will help us the common understanding of the today's topic. So I already mentioned intercultural setting, interculturality. Maybe you also heard similar terminology, multiculturalism. So there, of course, we're not going to the definition and the differences of all these related terms. So if you're also a researcher working on this topic, please excuse me. So this is not the goal to go in a deep research, but generally, so I will mentioning a lot of intercultural this, intercultural that. Interculturality generally is about navigating the uncertainties and all these complex interactions that arise among people from different cultural backgrounds, and also or being in a new cultural environment or in a new. And also when I speak cultural environment, it is not only the matter of countries, it could be also the matter of sector. So at ABG, since we're also between academia, industry, non-profits, and so on, so we also see that there are also common problematics within changing the environment. Doesn't matter whether it is geographical environment or sectorial. For us, what will be important generally while exploring this topic is these 3 key elements. First, self. And the self refers to understanding your own cultural assumptions and all your biases, all your negative understanding of culture that you might have. Then the other emphasizes all this empathy and curiosity that is needed to explore other perspectives and interact with other people. Of course, well, there's no interculturality without other. It's just us without some small individual differences. And finally, context. Context highlights the importance of adapting to the very specific cultural situation and all this interaction that is creating right now. So in interculturality, there's not very much of common keys that could work each time. Every situation has something unique that you need also to analyze while navigating in this context. That's why we will also talk about the intercultural competence. And here we're talking about the ability to interact effectively across cultures. And this competence, it's a meta competence that actually includes a lot of smallest but also important soft skills, soft competencies. It relies on attitudes such as openness and respect, the cultural knowledge, ideally, of course. Without this, it will not work either. And then also communication skills as well. And this competence, it's not just something nice to have, something additional for international researchers. It is also a 21st century skill that also employers in industry, but in any sector, they are looking for. So for this, well, I received a lot of the very long list of participants from different backgrounds. So I prepared some of quick selection of job offers. Probably then it is not covering all possibilities, but just the idea to show you what can you do with this intercultural competence. And quickly checking if there is some questions for me. All right. So some job offers. So the selection of these job offers are related to PhDs, PhD holders, or at least it says that, well, PhD would be a plus among what is required for the job. So the very first example is coming from Luxembourg, so machine learning scientist. And for this role, the employer demonstrates the importance of working in intercultural teams and also having strong communication skills in English. So you see, even if in the context of machine learning, where, well, there could be, of course, some collaboration, common goals, as is also mentioned, and collaboration within a team. It could be also for some other positions, even collaboration across geographies. So if a company has a lot of offices worldwide, so there should be probably collaborations, and also, of course, with clients, understanding also of the goals. That's why the ability to adapt and understand cultural nuances is really is key, even for such technical job. Another example is coming from France, junior science officer within a non-profit organization. So here the offer highlights diplomacy, tolerance, and the ability to communicate effectively across cultural and also scientific boundaries. It shows really the importance of clear and culturally sensitive communication for these policy discussions that will be the main activity for this role. Another example for economist or analyst, so PhD in social sciences. So here, this job requires excellent communication skills in multiple languages, and also the ability to work effectively in multicultural teams. Then they need to have the need for language proficiency, English, French, Spanish, and of course, well, probably there will be some need to exchange with different international stakeholders and clients. Another example for more senior position is coming from Denmark this time. So team lead and lead consultant for modeling and methods team. So here, what is important is this accent on collaboration in a multicultural environment, and also encouragement to have a curiosity and the ability to challenge others constructively. So it's not just having your intercultural competence and all qualities that are related, but also to encourage others to be so, to do so. So with the idea to keep an inclusive team environment, and that could lead to innovation and even within very once again technical domains as well. And the last job offer is coming from Spain, also for more managerial positions. So here, head of global services, medical and scientific affairs. So here, well, the role is for a leader that in addition to be a leader, they are looking for someone with cultural awareness, team management in a global environment, and then of course the person who will be able to foster trust across diverse teams. So you see, even at high level, there's also more of need to have such a skill. So maybe for the very junior position, what will be important is, the capacity to work in a multicultural team, to have some listening skills, empathy, and then also while growing professionally and occupying more managerial positions, employers will be explicitly asking for this intercultural competence along with technical skills. And it also shows the importance that such skills, they're very important in today's job market. And I do such selection of job offers a lot, and I see that, of course, for roles in management positions within NGOs, international organizations, some non-scientific positions linked to communication, or when it is in need to interact with others, there's always, well, not always, but often, a skill related to interculturality. There's no fixed vocabulary, so there's no, if you will check, oh, let me see if there's intercultural competence needed in my field, probably you will not find this by these keywords. It could be related skills. Once again, empathy, flexibility, capacity to work in international team, could be tolerance, diplomacy. So all these, they are a part of, well, they're making this meta competence, which is interculturality. But then also, as we saw, there's some technical skills, research related positions, when is also some employers are asking for this intercultural competence, because, well, nowadays research is international. There's a lot of collaborations across not only teams within the same institution, but among different institutions within different countries. So of course, there's a lot of also global projects that should be secured and advanced. So this is why doesn't matter the sector, the competence is highly in demand nowadays. Do you have some questions about this part? Some comments maybe. All right, let's continue then. I'm checking if there's something. All right, well, um, Luxembourg Institute of Health, one of the example was a very rich international setting. All right, so please continue sharing your situation linked to the interculturality and so on. And let's keep going. So what it is important to know within intercultural competence is that it's a lifelong process. If you once meet the person who will say, I'm highly interculturally competent, I do know everything. Well, maybe the person exaggerates a little bit. It's fine not to know everything, but what will be important is, of course, to push yourself in this learning process. And there's some scheme you will see what is important to understand. So first of all, of course, intercultural competence is still individual competence. So everything starts with an individual. And in the very first, it could be some truly idea that there's some character traits that could be more useful than some others. So if the person is naturally more extrovert, maybe it could help reaching the other, but it doesn't mean that introverts cannot be culturally competent. It's just that it could take some more additional time. But anyway, it involves on the individual level, respecting and valuing other cultures, having an open mind, so without judgment, this curiosity, the request for knowledge and understanding of the some cultural background of others. So of course, even if you if you have something inner in you that will help you in the building of intercultural competence, that what will be important is, of course, to develop some awareness of different identities, accepting others, different elements. That goes also to practices in interaction with others, when you see whether you have adaptability, flexibility, ethno-relative perception, and it means that you're not favoring a single way of being, that you have this acceptance that your point of view, first of all, is not the only one point of view, and especially it could be not the right point of view for some particular situation. And then, of course, once again, the context and the behavior that is context appropriate, within communication, the good communication that also fits some particular cultural context, observation and analysis. So intercultural competence is built a lot of analysis and self-reflection. If you're just navigating, exchanging with people without this self-reflection, probably at some point you will not evolve enough as it should be. So based on this scheme, I'd like to propose first to see how it works between your cultural knowledge and understanding what different identities could be, and also how it could be related to particular context. So we're going to do some exercise. Before that, do you have questions or comments on what we just saw until now? All right, I'm checking. We have 3 pages. Well, I do have 3 pages. No, now it's 2 pages. Faces. No comments? All right. I suppose you're all willing to start the very first exercise. So for this exercise, please prepare a pen and piece of paper, because so I will show you an image, and then, well, as you see in the title, what do you see? I will ask you to write down some elements that you see on the exercise. So just let's take a minute to grab a piece of paper and a pen to do this exercise. And well, since I'm waiting for you to equip yourself, do not hesitate once again to share anything you'd like to share for this moment or ask a question. All right, let me know if you figure out a piece of paper and a pen nearby. All right, so I see the interaction. All right, so once again, I will show you a picture, note down everything that comes to your mind that is happening on this picture. Here we go. Let's take a couple of additional minutes. Just make sure that you have at least 10 different sentences of what you see on this picture. And if you have less than 10, so please add something else what you can see on the photograph. And while you're preparing the at least 10 different sentences about what's going on in the picture, I see the question from Adil, who would like to know about postdoctoral or research opportunities available. So unfortunately, it is not exactly the topic for today's webinar, but well, since you are already a user of EURAXESS services, so please connect there on EURAXESS jobs portal to see what is existing and what is open right now in your field. And then you can also use APG website. We also have job board within jobs in industry and in academia in different countries. All right. So when you see the picture, usually there's always uh, some categorization that could exist. So my question to you will be, how would you categorize your observations? And let's look at three concepts that exist. First of all, we can observe in a very descriptive way. So if we're talking about the description, it is a neutral or really value-free description of something. For example, there are two people, or it is circular in shape. So in the description, we're almost always on the description of shapes, the nature of the objects or the situation. Then we can also interpret some situation in what we see. So here in interpretation, the difference with the description is that we add a possible explanation of what something could be or its function. So it's not just the description of it, but how it's working, how it's functioning, without pretending that it is absolutely it. So here it could be, it looks like a toy, or they're wearing uniforms. So we know that some clothes could be considered uniforms. We know already what it is. It is our interpretation. And the last category, while observing a situation, could be evaluation. So here it is really a judgment coming from our perspective, or emotionally titled response to something. So, for example, it looks fun, or she seems angry, she seems stressed. So it's really with the difference to the description, what is really the shape, interpretation, the function, and in the evaluation, it's emotion, what it reveals in us. So I invite you to look at your responses and try to categorize them, whether it is description, interpretation, and evaluation. Once it is done, also count your responses. So how many would you have in description, how many in interpretation, and how many in evaluation? And then we are going to discuss the latest steps in this exercise. So now try to, well, put just a letter D-E, D-I-E in front of each of sentences you described, as you understand, whether it is description, interpretation, or evaluation. Now let's take the same 2 minutes for this. All right, let's discuss. So, discuss in a very particular way. I will not ask your concrete answers. I'm sure that they are all good. What I'd like to know is the number of description out of how many statements you have. So for example, you have 5 description out of 10 different sentences you have. So how many description and out of how much? And then the ones who are willing also take the parole and chit chat with me, do not hesitate. So I see 4 out of 10, 4 out 11, 7 out 10, 2 out 10, 8 out 10, 7 out 11, and 11 out 11. That's great. Okay, 2 out 10, 5. All right. Also 10 out 10. Good. All right. Very good. So my experience shows that often we have actually more responses in evaluation or interpretation than in the real description. Like naturally we have this tendency, the jump to do in order to interpret things and bring it evaluation. So we were culturally educated to do so. So I will show you the possible answers for each of these. So the description, what it could be, and you check with your answers. 5 individuals. 4 people have their backs turned, 1 person is facing forward. A person covered from head to toe with a thin blanket over their face. The individual in protective gear is holding a box and a stick-like object. 2 children are holding hands with an adult, and the image is monochromatic. So once again, description, what objectively do you see? 4 people are standing, 1 is gesturing. So really the description of the shape or the nature of objects. In interpretation, what we have as possible answers: a man in protective coveralls wearing a mask. The person in protective gear could be a street cleaner, pest control worker, or metal detector operator. The family appears to be working together. The man could be a father. The gas mask implies potential exposure to chemicals, pollution, or safety precaution. So in interpretation, we are describing the function, or we think what is happening. That's why the terms that this seems to be something, it could be something, is rarely in interpretation. So it's our way to see the function and what's going on. And then evaluation: the atmosphere evoke a dystopian or apocalyptic scenario, a gas mask, an insect exterminator, people look suspicious, outbreak of COVID-19, a family with the father and his 2 daughters, a working class woman, old cars consuming a lot of gasoline, and carefree attitude. Evaluation, we add the judgment or reaction. So it feels tense. It feels carefree, as a carefree attitude. It's our way to perceive emotions and some gestures, behaviors, and so on. Of course, as you might notice, there's some certain gray area between each of these categories. For example, someone might say that girl is a description, or woman is just a description, man. Or for some others, already adding the the gender to the person. It is our interpretation, what genders look like. Or even some, as I highlighted, surroundings, urban environment, mid-20th centuries. For someone, we could say, well, we all see what mid-20th century look like in different countries, so we can also add in the description. For some others, we'll say, well, someone who never been in mid 20th century, or people maybe they do not specify. Let's say if you have also a notion as that the situation is happening in 70s in the United States, well, it's because you know what how some cities in the United States look like in 70s. It's not a real the description, but for some others it could be a description. The same between interpretation and evaluation. A gas mask, we can say that this is just the function, but at the same time it could be already the negative use of it. So we know that one mask, it covers the face and it is specifically for a gas. So in evaluation, what will be problematic is saying that it's a gas mask. It could be maybe some pollution mask, but we didn't left some possibility for an option to be something else. So I invite you to check once again all your answers, and also I encourage you to express some reactions. Were you surprised by some of these possible answers? You see the differences between what you place in the description, interpretation, and evaluation, and between what I suggest? Is there some reaction to this exercise? Yes, Malina, if I pronounce correctly, let me know.
Yeah. Is it okay if I just speak in the video?
Of course.
Okay.
Better.
I found it very interesting. Thank you very much. Immediately, I had some difficulties of categorizing my observations. And I was really struggling with the difference between interpretation and evaluation. And even with your examples, I was like, but where is the difference? Yeah, so I think it really helped me that you explained it a bit further and to take apart even further what am I. So I became more aware of where I'm already making assumptions where I think they are on the interpretations level, but I think actually they are in the evaluation. So yeah, it was a very emotionally deep few minutes for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your feedback. It is our human nature. It's not something that only you got. We're all together. We've been for years and years experiences and forced to this idea because actually, initially, it was our survival rules. So if we can quickly, without spending time in our brain on description and interpretation, jump to evaluation and realize what's going on in some particular situation, it could show that we're a part of some group, some culture. We have the common understanding. So from the very beginning of the childhood, so we're trained to this. And then in intercultural setting, of course, this is something that we could forget about, or at least to pay, well, not forget about, it will be two presumptions, but to pay attention to. We cannot jump quickly to evaluation in different contexts, especially even if we know something about new culture, new country, but we should go first. Am I judging already a situation through my understanding of how I could see the situation, or is it something objective? And to find these other possibilities, we need, of course, to take time and to see, all right, what could be the objective description of the situation? What are possible interpretations in this situation? And then, based on multiple possibilities, what could be the right evaluation based on my experience and what I've collected from others from the situation. So in reality, of course, we do not behave like this. In a real life situation while exchanging with someone, it will be impossible to say like, oh, okay, stop. Let me think. Let me grab a piece of paper and pen and to do at least 10 possibilities of noticing what's going on. That's why working on intercultural competence is a very retrospective way. So first, well, you reacted as you reacted, you evaluated as you evaluated. Afterwards, allow yourself time to come back to the situation and analyze this. And by doing such exercises from time to time, of course, your brain will be trained not to jump directly to evaluation. And your automatic reactions will slow down. You'll know, all right, before coming to conclusion, maybe there's something else that is missing. So really, if there's some intercultural situation that bothers you, do this exercise. Try to also collect some additional interpretation and evaluation coming from other people, your entourage, who can also advise you what other interpretation and evaluation could be. And there are some other reactions to this exercise or questions. If not, let's go forward. So yeah, of course, I bet you would like to know what is really happening on this picture. So just for your general culture, it is from archive of journals. So and the description that is coming from the journalist who originally prepared the article and as it was published in the journal. So walking the streets of Manhattan in a hazmat suit to publicize an upcoming anti-nuclear rally, this protester drew stares from passersby. The rally took place in a nuclear power plant in Shoreham, Long Island on June the 3rd, 1979, International Anti-Nuclear Day. All right, so this is how our presumptions are working. Let's move forward and also to see how we can use the intercultural competence, but with the angle between our capacity to adapt quickly to some situation, to some others within the different context. And for this, of course, in the context, we should pay attention to different layers of it. Once again, so I will not have time to go to the details of different cultural layers, but when we speak about culture, it is not just country culture because, well, first of all, it does not exist one unique culture of some territory, geographical territory, or almost do not exist. There are some countries that are very that are considered close to foreigners. Let's take an example of Japan, but even Japan is lately exposed also to the globalized world, so we cannot even name Japan as a purely Japanese unique culture. And in addition to this national cultures, plural. There could be also addition of organizational culture, which will be most important for us, for researchers and research-related professionals. And of course, there's some influences between national culture that go into organizational culture, and all of this will influence how individuals approach work, how they organize their daily life, how they behave in a professional setting, how they make the decision within professional environment. And then, of course, within interaction with others, what will be important to know is what is considered appropriate. So it's not, of course, basically, and from the very beginning of intercultural understanding, you should learn your cultural background, your biases, as we saw in the interpretation, describe, interpret, and evaluate exercise. So probably your answers are based on what you've experienced. As we saw on the table, I added the COVID-19 because, well, recently it's the most common experience of wearing masks. So a lot of people would associate a mask to this experience. But if someone just skipped 5 last years, so maybe never heard about COVID-19, it could not be the same evaluation possible. So they say as appropriate. So we cannot just say like, all right, I do know how to behave in a very polite way in my culture. Would it be appropriate somewhere else? It could be, because there's likely some common things among different cultures, but some others could be completely different. And what is considered appropriate or respectful in one culture could be absolute opposite in some another. So that's why I would like to share with you some information on cultural dimensions. Who already heard about these terms? The ones who keep your camera on, please let me know by some movements. Okay, thank you. No? Also, the people who would like to write in the chat, please do so if you have already heard about cultural dimensions, if it's some term that you used to. Okay, not heard. Thank you, Hillary. All right. So, of course, it is obvious that every culture is different. And at some point after World War II, there was the need to understand actually what is common, what is different between between different countries' cultures. So there was some research launched after the war with this idea, and completed by years and years of intercultural work to analyze and to classify different countries and cultures based on few cultural dimensions. So there's also some different dimensions that could exist here. I based the presentation on Hofstede, the Dutch researcher. Maybe you also heard about Edward Hall, the pioneer actually of the research. He proposed some other dimensions. Later on, there was also some additional dimensions. Once again, the goal is not the theory, but understanding how it works. So what is important is really to start from the unknown, okay? We recognize that there's some differences. And then what can we do in order to understand how different cultures, different people coming from these cultures work? And of course, we do not assume that you will learn everything on the spot. There should be some research done, reading done about these different cultural dimensions. So these dimensions, they actually frameworks, some criteria that is a culture was analyzed and with the idea to see the differences in behavior, people's behavior, social norms, and decision making, and so on. So actually, these dimensions, they're really the key to explain how what are possible different ways people coming from one particular country culture could use. So there are some key cultural dimensions: power distance, individualism versus collectivism, and certainly avoidance, achievements versus nurturing. And in all books, you might see masculinity versus femininity, the old terms, and then long and short-term orientation, indulgence versus restraint. So once again, you understood I will not go deep in the theory, but just some examples of how it works actually. And I will provide you some country examples also basically on Europe, because the majority are based in European countries. So I checked also the chat box. So these theories on cultural dimensions. First, hierarchy distance. So actually, well, it is coming from the name. It is relationship to power. And if we're talking also about organizational work setting, how employees must do whether they must do what they told to do, or whether they can express some in other options, how the etiquette, professional etiquette is established, how the inequality is built. So actually, the power distance influences access to information, what is considered expertise, the importance of certificates, diplomas, logos, prestigious schools, and so on. If we're talking about the countries, the opposite countries, so if we take the low power distance, so when it is really the hierarchy is flat, we can cite the example of Denmark, and as the opposite with a historically high power distance, we can cite also France. And also what I prepared for you is really the life situation in research, how it works. So let's imagine a situation. In a collaborative research project, a junior researcher identifies an error in the experimental setup. And there could be some different reactions. So in low power distance, the junior directly informs his her PI about the mistake, using first name and expecting that the problem will be solved collaboratively. In high power distance, the reaction could be different. There could be the hesitation whether to acknowledge the mistake, acknowledge the mistake directly by ourselves, or ask somebody else to share this information with the PI, respecting the hierarchy, or to hide also, even in some contexts, to hide this error and try to solve the problem first, and do not let your PI know. Another dimension, individualism versus collectivism. So here, the connection between the individual and the group members. we're here talking about responsibilities, rules, relationships, motivation, how it is influenced, and also the voice that will be given to the youth. If we take the examples of, once again, Europe, highly individualistic country, is Netherlands. So the individualism is very much promoted there, and the more collectivistic country could be named Croatia. So once again, I'm talking about European settings. Of course, if we're taking also in the consideration other parts of Earth, it could be completely different scores. So we could compare also the United States as highly individualistic, and then Cuba that is even more collectivistic than Croatia. So here, an example that you maybe also been experienced. A team is deciding on the authorship order for a publication. In the individualistic setting, so each researcher would like to position themselves in the order based on the individual contribution and the impact on the project, and the collectivistic approach will be mostly the discussion, the collective discussion to agree how they can how they can establish the number of naming in the publication. Some comments, questions for now? No, I'm checking the chat box. No question. All right, then let's continue. Another dimension, and certainly avoidance. So whether there's some cultures that, well, if something is uncertain, how that it's fine, it's just the life, and society is able to tolerate this, or a culture and people from this culture have the tendency to avoid uncertainty and different risks. In Europe, with high uncertainty avoidance, I can mention Greece, Malta, and then with a very low uncertainty avoidance, it could be Ireland, where actually the tolerance to the uncertainty is very high, and it could be even considered as creativity to come up with the latest decision to solve a problem. And then the real life situation, research funding. So in some cultures or cultural settings, once again, with high uncertainty avoidance, a team prefers to apply for well-established funding programs with a clear application process and defined deliverables, avoiding some riskier opportunities. Within the low uncertainty avoidance, a team is open to explore some unconventional or experimental funding options, even if there's some rules are unclear or requirements are ambiguous. Another example, another dimension, achievement versus nurturing. So here we're talking about a preference in society for everything that is heuristic, some assertiveness, some material rewards for success, some like to receive money, to receive some object, very prestigious as a reward. That's why all these qualities, they were attributed to masculinity. So in other sources, you can find this like this. And nurturing cultures, there was tendency to achieve all together while sharing feelings and problematics, and really to motivate people by the good and empathetic environment. So for this latest, nurturing cultures, we're often provide an example of Scandinavian countries, especially Norway is really highly positioned on this part. And this achievement part, we can name Hungary, for example. And the real life situation, so a research team is presenting their work and international competence in the achievement-oriented culture. Of course, the focus will be while working, and not just, I'm not talking here about the presentation itself, but like the all preparations will be the focus on measurable awards, recognition, really this to provide something more competitive, something well, new to the community. And the nurturing oriented cultures, there's the preparation is really goes with collaboration, mutual support. So it's not because you will finish your presentation earlier and before the whole team that it will be well considered. Maybe on the contrary. So it's really other elements that just the being the first in the line will be promoted. And also two last dimensions, long-term, short-term orientation. So I saw there's some people were from Finland. Let me know if it's true or not. Finland will be really is cited as a country with a very long-term engagement, and in front of it we can place Italy when the decision are very short-termed. So if we're talking a real life situation, it could be the discussion of the goals for the next project. Within short-term orientation cultures, the team focuses really on publishing results quickly, secure funding, obtaining recognition within the short term. There's no, and these short terms, they are not really goals or very well reflected with the long-term goals. It doesn't mean that long-term goals do not exist. They're not just not taken in the consideration while working on short terms. And with long-term orientation, that's really the goal could be obtained later on. What will be important is to prioritize the good functioning, the foundation for future research, and even if it could be not through the immediate results, but later on. And the last one, indulgence versus restraint. So it's all about free time. So work-life balance is a very good example of it. Indulgence, where it will be considered that, well, people will take time to celebrate something, to have some personal time. And for this, I can provide the example of the UK. And on the restraint part, so it could be also an example of another researcher postponing personal celebration to complete work tasks. And here it could be example of a country such as Bulgaria. So it will be first really finishing the work, and then, well, it's just a work. There's no need to celebrate even small successes. you will receive the presentation afterwards, and as you might notice in previous slides, there was also a link to Hofstede website that is very interactive, so you can compare different countries and see when they position themselves. So of course, it's not just always, it's not the question about the opposites. It's not that one country is 100 and another is 0. It's a scale out of 100, and well, it's based by dominant culture presenting a country. So you can see that, well, for some of this dimension, some cultures, they are close to each other, some others, they're, well, as I provided in examples, then there's some differences in the way they collectively would do things.